हरि ओम। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्रीचिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा शरीरं योगेन चित्तं पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलिं पाञ्जलिना नतोऽस्मि। हरि Om. Amongst the extremely studious and serious approaches taken by the rishis and the drashtas, those who were realized soul, during their process of understanding the creation and the creator and our role into it. What really intrigues one in this world, the question that really perplexes us in this world is, who am I? What is all this that I see around me? Because I can see through my indriyas, I can perceive the created world, which clearly tells me that I am a person perceiving the world, so I'm different from the world. And other than the world and me, I do not know anything. The seers, the munis, and the rishis have spoken about the God. They have spoken about the Brahman. They have spoken about the Atman. They have spoken about the Purusha. They have spoken about the Prakriti. But none of that ever touches the brinks of my intelligence. So it is quite an intriguing fact for me as a small jiva to know precisely why I am here. Am I here for what I'm doing right now? And what I'm doing right now is I'm performing or fulfilling a role of a father, a husband, a brother, a son, and interacting with the people like me, around me. And there are some sentient objects around me, and there are some insentient objects around me. I also find that I try to pick up certain objects and certain relationships, and they give me happiness. At the same time, they give me extreme amount of pain. I'm subjected to the vagaries of pain or the sorrow and the happiness. I come in this world unannounced. I do not know who brings me in this world. Physiologically, I'm born to my mother, but from where I come, I'm not aware. If there is a fog there is a mist, there is a screen, a smoke screen, which completely obliterates my view or the knowledge about from where I come. And so is the case where I go. I cry and crib for those who depart from here, and I know very well that I am also going to depart from here. Where do I depart to? Where do I go? What happens to me after I depart? All in all, when I analyze or try to investigate all these questions, I come to a situation where I can only conclude one thing, that I know very little of my questions. First of all, there are very few who have these questions. Second, those who have questions hardly ever try to find the answers to them. And three, if at all I try to find the answers, I find them too short to explain everything that is in my mind as a question. And that is why there has been umpteen number of attempts in the history of mankind to give a final solution or almost final solution to all these questions. And those who dwelt upon these questions with extreme amount of intent concentration, this intense concentration did give them some answers to their questions. And depending upon the one who was meditating or concentrating on these questions, he got those answers, and those answers, when systematically collected and were presented in a proper form, they become what is called as the darshanas. As and when the rishis and munis realized the answers to these questions step by step, they realized that there is a scripture in which these answers are already written. No one knows from where the scripture came, but every time they did experience an answer to a question, a primordial question, the fundamental question, the basic question, they did find that the answers are corroborative with what is found in the scriptures called Veda. So the knowledge or the answer to these questions is as ancient, as old as the scripture called Veda. And that being the reason, Veda has been given the supreme position as far as the answers to this question that come to our mind are answered. Amongst so-called systematic compilation of these, what can be termed as intuitive experiences. Intuitive because they are not related to the indriyas. Because they are beyond the indriyas, they are called atindriya anubhava. Indriya anubhava, we are all used to it. That is called indriya gocharata. The indriya anubhava is sendriya anubhava. So indriya anubhava. Anubhava, which is not in the hands of indriyas, but it transcends the indriyas, or it is beyond the indriyas, is called atindriya anubhava. The very fact that atindriya anubhava is an oxymoron, because what is atindriya cannot be anubhava. Anubhava is essentially what the indriyas give to us. So it is called as experience or experiential knowledge or empirical knowledge. What we get as a knowledge after crossing the boundary of indriyas is called atindriya, which is basically intuition or intuitive knowledge. It is also called as a yoga jnana. The knowledge that dawns after certain amount of exercise for the intelligence or the buddhi is undertaken. So the same buddhi which gives us experiential knowledge crosses the boundary of indriyas and enters the zone of atindriya intuitive knowledge, atindriya jnana. These atindriya jnanas are compiled, and one such compilation, these compilations are called darshanas. One such darshan is a Sankhya Yoga darshana. Sankhya and Yoga are two different darshanas, but are generally combined together as Sankhya Yoga darshana because there is very little difference between Sankhya and Yoga. The reason why we are trying to study the Sankhya Tattva Jnana while studying the Yoga Shastra is it has given a very precise separation and division of the questions that we were trying to answer. Sankhya, as far as the whole creation is concerned, separates the whole world into only two things. One is called Prakriti, the other is called Purusha. And it is very clearly stated in Sankhya Tattva Jnana that the two are not at all comparable. Prakriti is achetana, insentient, achetana or jada. Prakriti is trigunatmaka, that means it is dominated by three of the gunas, and the Prakriti is nothing else but the combination and permutation of these gunas, creating variety of subjects in the Prakriti. So we have seen how Prakriti or the Pradhana undergoes modifications. The modification is called Vikara or Vikruti. So Prakriti undergoes Vikruti with the help of three gunas, and all the Srushti is created. We are one of the constituents of this particular Prakriti. Depending upon the percentage or the predominance of the gunas, each of the creation may have dominance of certain guna, and accordingly the guna pravrutti is exhibited through that insentient object. The ability to exhibit the guna is because of Purusha, although Purusha is a guna rahita. So a clear-cut dichotomy, a clear-cut separation, a clear-cut differentiation is there between Purusha and Prakriti. This much we are aware. One of the basic and the fundamental question now is the whole purpose of studying the creation of this Srushti is to know if the Srushti had started from a point A, and it has expanded into variety of the forms, and we appear to be at the point Z, then perhaps by moving back from Z to A to the Arambha, there is a possibility of me transcending the creation. The very fact that I intend to transcend the creation is because the creation which is afflicted by the three gunas is the reason for my pitiable existence. So I presume, and I must presume, that my existence is not a very happy or ever blissful existence. I do get some points here and there or some illuminating, scintillating signs of happiness, but they disappear as fast as they appear. Overall, the world is full of sorrow. We ought to admit the first cardinal truth. The Lord Buddha said that the world, the Jagat, is full of atyantika dukkha. Had there been not dukkham, there wouldn't have been any Shastra. Why would anybody try to wriggle out of the situation if the situation is not painful? Since it is painful, since it is dukkhatmaka, to get rid to a situation where the dukkha is permanently absent, or in other words, only bliss prevails, or in a very logical way, nothing prevails. Because dukkha prevails only when there is a counter-intuitive sukham is presumed. The absence of dukkha itself means the absence of sukha. In other words, sukham dukkham dvandvatita, situation can be achieved by a very logical understanding that if the creation which has unfolded over number of years has resulted into intermixing of the gunas, provoking the person to undertake the karma because of the predominance of guna, which happens basically through the desire leading to the vasanas, and the whole conglomerate in totality gives me enormous amount of pain rather than the happiness. So one of the logical conclusion is, if coming here has caused me pain, going back perhaps may dissolve my pain. And it is not a hearsay, because those who tried to go back from the point Z to the point A, from the creation status that we have to back to the origin of creation, have increasingly felt happy, happier, and happiest. Since the unfolding of the whole creative process has taken enormous amount of time, the yogi, in his contemplative mood, in the meditation, slowly starts conquering the unfoldment that has happened to the Prakriti. And this going back of the yogi starts only when the world is dissolved for him, the outer world. Any amount of involvement in the outer world debars a yogi from entering into the internal world. Every created being has two worlds, and the whole world exists in the mind. Every creation has an antakaranam. The antakaranam is the thing that is there to interact with the world, or a bold statement that the world does not exist anywhere except in the mind. Because the entire creation is there in the mind, because mind is the one which comprehends the universe. The ability to comprehend depends upon the power of antakarana. If the antakarana is not very powerful and is very, very dull and opaque like a stone, there is no way the universe can be understood, because the ability to comprehend the world lies in the mind or the antakarana and its purity. Purer the antakarana, more and more is the possibility of knowing the universe. And this antakarana, which is pristine purity, which has pristine purity and clarity, is called buddhi. And this buddhi, as it becomes more and more purer, and more purer in Sankhyan terms would mean more and more sattva guna purposhita. Such a buddhi comprehends more and more creation. Comprehending of more and more creation is called knowledge. It is not the knowledge, but it is called knowledge. Try to understand that the knowledge that we refer to is nothing else but knowing about the creation. Knowing about the creation is not the knowledge, it is a pseudo knowledge. Because knowing about the creation, there has to be somebody who comprehends the creation. As long as there is a person who comprehends the creation, the knowledge is separate from the knower. Only and only when, instead of creation, the yogi tries to know the creator, the knowledge of creation is surpassed. Yogi in his internal journey tries to expand the capacity of the buddhi or the antakarana or the pristine purity of the antakarana more and more, more and more, and with the help of concentration, the scope of his knowledge keeps on widening by leaps and bounds. Imagine an ant crawling on the street would never know how long and big the street itself is, forget about knowing other things in the world. In the similar manner, an ordinary man's intellect cannot comprehend anything beyond the pond that he is staying in. So to comprehend a sea for a frog in the pond is a very, very difficult and gargantuan task. However, the yogi, by sheer dint of his courage, by sheer dint of his viryam, by sheer dint of his utsaha, is able to expand through the purity of intellect, the width of his knowledge, which is like a window opening wide and wide, wide and wide, and every single step that he moves forward, the knowledge of the creation keeps on expanding. The very fact that the knowledge of the world keeps on expanding, of the creation keeps on expanding, presupposes a fact that when the knowledge has expanded to an extent where there is nothing left to be known, that is the point when that intellect, which is called now prajna, enters into a zone which is beyond creation. When it goes beyond creation, at that point, since there is nothing left to be known, the one who is trying to know, whatever he's trying to know, and the process of knowledge, all of them merge into one. Beyond that state, because there is no creation left to be known, what is left is only knowledge. Jnana Surya. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya apetam mukham. The lid on the Hiranmay, the shining, scintillating knowledge, pure knowledge, pure bliss, which is lying beyond that particular boundary of a point where knowing about the creation ends, the yogi merges with knowledge. He is no more a yogi. There is no effort to be known because there is nothing left to be known. The knower, the knowledge, and the knowing all get rolled into one, because it is a state beyond all the three gunas, because the creation has been conquered, the creation has been transcended. It goes without saying that that stage is without any gunas, so it is nistraigunya zone. That which is not, which is nistraigunya, and that even which has left the potency of creation, in other words, the one who has conquered the Prakriti altogether, suddenly realizes that he is separate from Prakriti. That itself is called Purusha Khyati, or knowledge of Purusha, or instantly he comes to know that the creation is separate and Purusha is separate. Who can know that Prakriti is separate from Purusha? Only the Purusha. Only the one who is separate can know that he is separate, not the one who is in the creation. So we have, on a broader scale, stages where a yogi keeps on transcending backwards and comes at the brink of Prakriti, the point precisely where the creation has started. It is almost at the tipping point the yogi reaches, and the last leap, the last jump, the last movement is something which is extremely painful in the term of efforts that are required. We can't call it as a painful because pain as such has lost more or less relevance when the internal journey of yogi starts. Because yogi has parama vairagya, even the pain has been left off. However, as far as the backward movement or the what is called as involution is concerned, the yogi in the beginning, when he moves from a very gross object or a sthula mahabhuta, he is able to talk about his movement and the journey backwards. So there are written descriptions about their experiences in detail, matching with everyone's experience, which again states us that the experience that the yogi gets in the beginning are the same. And logically, we can presume that they must be same at the latter stages, although beyond, beyond asmita, these experiences are very difficult to collect because there is no one left to tell the experiences what he went through. The experiences are very stark and macroscopic in nature, macro, not micro, demonstrable, recollectable as an experience. That is why Savitarka, Savichar, Sanand, and Asmita, the yogis can tell what experience they go through. However, the Vitarka Samadhi, they are able to tell very clearly what happened during that process. Moment they go to Vichara, the explanation becomes little foggy because they do remember, but not 100%, maybe about 70% of it. They move forward to the Ananda, the remembrance goes down. Why it is so? It is because as the yogi moves into the inward journey, as he progresses faster on that journey, the yogi starts losing his identity or ego or ahankara. In fact, through the vairagya of the external world, yogi has inculcated in him egolessness to a certain degree. But in meditation, while moving from vitarka, vichara, ananda, and asmita, the ego starts dissolving more and more. When there is less ego, there is less remembrance because smruti, memory, is a function of ego, ahankara. How can anybody remember if he doesn't have ahankara? Because who will remember? The one who remembers is me, ahankara. That is why after the asmita is transcended, which is the last stage of sampradnyat samadhi. So till sampradnyat samadhi, in these four stages, the ego slowly starts dissolving, asmita or ahankar being the last stage. Beyond this stage, when the yogi tries to enter into asampradnyat samadhi, his journey has started now at a point called ahankara, which has transcended. Now he has got steps to go forward. From ahankara, he moves to what is called as buddhi tattvam, or it's basically coming to the pradhana or the moola prakriti. This particular patch of his movement is not as easy as it looks. And that being the reason, a yogi, when he moves into this particular direction, he may, in his deep state of meditation, lose the last final surge of power that he requires, the Shakti that he requires, and then because he is in a very deep state of very deep meditation, he may stand a chance of losing his identity because he has anyway lost his ahankara, except a very small or a thin thread of the experience that he carried forward. Mind well, the yogi at this stage is not carrying any experience of the worldly things that he has done because those are all gone. The only memory that he carries is, only experience that he carries with him is, the only sanskaras that he carries with him is the sanskaras of the previous samadhi. When he was into vitarka, vichar, ananda, and asmita, The experience that he had during those Samprajnat Samadhi are the only memories with which the yogi is moving forward. And there is a possibility that such an yogi, because of these samskaras, which are also to be jettisoned, which are also to be annihilated, which are also to be dissolved, if he fails to dissolve it, try to understand it this way. Suppose you are very, very happy. How difficult it is to forget the happiness. Because happiness is such a beautiful feeling, we get an absolute sheer, perverted, vulgar, small glimpse of that happiness, and yet we are so happy. Some stupid things such as something to eat, some stupid things such as maybe cohabiting with a woman. These things give us enormous amount of pleasure because this is enormous from our point of view. It is said that Maithunananda is the highest happiness that we as human beings can perceive, which we are so intent and we launch to get it. Imagine the same multiplied by some million times. What would be the quantum of happiness that a yogi gets? And such an happiness that he gets, how difficult it must be for him to dissolve this happiness and cross beyond this happiness. Because this bliss is so difficult to lose the grip on, the yogi at the stage of pradhana or prakriti, or just before that into the mahat tattva, may not erase the impression of the samskar of the happiness, that so it becomes almost compulsive for him to lay back on this experience of bliss and be in that bliss, presuming as if the end is achieved. There is a very subtle difference at this stage between happiness or the bliss that he is getting and Ananda Swarupa that is beyond that. I am the happiest person in this creation. Maybe a very high, elevated status. However, the bhoktruttvata of the happiness itself is an impediment because the yogi is supposed to go beyond that. That is why those who do not go beyond that remain basking into the same meditative practices, giving enormous amount of bliss at the stage of pradhana or at the stage of mahat. They are not released from the bondage, because being a part of the creation is a bondage. And that is why, since these souls or the yogis who have reached this stage are not the normal thing, they are extraordinary people, yet they do not qualify for the title of Purushakhyati. And because of their enormous power that they have, because they have almost reached to the beginning of the creation, they have satta or power over the creation. And such yogis who get merged with this are either called as Videha Deva or Prakruti Laya Deva. We saw that in detail last time. Such Prakruti Laya Devas, being the part of the Prakruti, are not born again, while the Videha Devas, being in the part of the creation, which is called as Sabrahmanda, Savarana Brahmanda, being a part of the Brahmanda, are born again as human beings, and then from there they move further again, starting precisely at the point where they were dissolved into this particular happiness, and then they make their progress. Most of our Puranic stories, we see that somebody was reborn and then he got what is called as a varam from one of the deity, and then he moved forward. All this business of varam and krupa is something to do with upward movement of this stuck yogis, if we can use that word. They are not stuck in that sense because they are highly elevated souls, That is the reason why they are called devas. And being at that particular stage, they naturally become officiating people of certain functions of the creation. Anybody who officiate for the functions of the universe is called deva. They're called deva because they're enlightened about the knowledge of the creation. One who is going to rule the universe, who is going to rule the part of the universe, must have the knowledge of that particular part. The one who has knowledge of the universe or that section of the universe becomes sectional head or officiating person or officiating devata. That is what we called as presiding deity. The word used is presiding. Deity presides on the function. So those are devas. Now comes the question. These are two types of yogis who unfortunately at the last stage do not move forward. They are called as bhava pratyaya yogi. But there are some yogis who are still trying hard to move forward into the last bastion. They are called as upaya pratyaya yogi. These upaya pratyaya yogi, how do they differ from these two bhava pratyaya yogis, from this videha deva and prakriti lina deva? These upaya pratyaya yogis use upayam to move forward, and these upayams which they use to move forward are called as Shraddha, Virya, Smruti, Samadhi, and Prajna. The 20th Sutra of Patanjali, Shraddha, Virya, Smruti, Samadhi, Prajna, Purvak, Itaresham. Those very few highly evolved rishis, they use these 5 techniques. Upaya is the technique. Upaya is an instrument. Upaya is a thing that is used to move forward as an alambana. And that is the mind. Well, this is not the alambana that is there earlier, because right now they're already into niralamba avastha. Alambana means taking support of, making use of. So Shraddha, what is Shraddha? Chetasaha samprasadaha. Shraddha is passionate interest of chitta. What is this passionate interest? We have Shraddha about whom? About Gurudeva in our chitta. Now imagine the yogi which is at the transcendental state in the last final bastion. What will be the Shraddha in his chitta? The only Shraddha in his chitta would be to attain Kaivalya, to have Purusha Darshanam. So that in the chitta is called Shraddha. Because to move forward, you require Shraddha. Till when? Till you have reached the point. After having Purusha Khyati, can there be any Shraddha? Because there is no Chittam. So no Shraddha is required. So Chetasaha Samprasada is Shraddha. This Shraddha, why it is required, can be understood from the point that the yogi that is Prakriti Laya is so much basking into the bliss of happiness that he forgets that he is supposed to move forward because his chitta is overwhelmed by the bliss. When the chitta is overwhelmed by the bliss, there is an erroneous impression in the mind of yogi that I have reached the destination, while only few yogis who are able to dissuade the chittam from this happiness are the only one who are able to inculcate in the chitta that I still need to move forward. That is Shraddha. Shraddhanam. Sat is the word. Shraddhanam, the truth. What is the truth? I am yet to reach the Purusha, and that is my aim. This thought, this vicharam, when it overtakes the enormous amount of bliss that is coming, then the Shraddha is supposed to be there at that stage in the mind of the yogi, in the chitta of the yogi, such utsaha sampanna. Because once you have Shraddha, then you have viryam, utsaha, that I have to reach there. So Shraddha and virya. And then this particular utsaha sampanna yogi which has the only smriti is of the experience that he had so far, which is used to discriminate that this experience so far that he had is not enough because there is an experience beyond it. So with that kind of smriti, he further concentrates himself. This is a final act of concentration, which is then called the samadhi. This samadhi puts yogi into a stage. That stage, the intelligence or the buddhi expands to its maximum possible width. Try to understand it this way, that in our buddhi we know very small things called knowledge of engineering, medicine, etc., etc., one knowledge of one body, physiology, pathology, whatever you call it. Expand this particular knowledge slowly, that one point of time you come to know what is there in the mind of everyone that is around me. It may be a miracle for us, but it is not a miracle at all for yogi, because that happens. Imagine you having the knowledge of all the insentient things around your world. Imagine you have knowledge of all the languages of all the created birds and what animals and whatnot. Imagine this knowledge further expands and you come to know instantly what is happening everywhere. The way you come to know what is happening to your finger, your toe, your stomach, your back, in the similar manners you come to know about the whole earth. Imagine knowledge further expands and you come to know what is happening all around into the solar system. Imagine the knowledge going further beyond and instantly you come to know about what is happening in the galaxies. What we are talking about is ever expanding vista of the knowledge of the buddhi. The one who is doing upaya pratyaya samadhi, the last bastion, the yogi's prajna, intellect, reaches the maximum possible width of knowledge and the boundaries dissolve. When the boundaries dissolve, not only that he knows everything of creation, the creation that happened, the creation that is happening, the creation that will happen, and the creation itself. That means he has the knowledge of the knowledge by the knowledge. There is no knower, there is no knowledge of something, there is no process of knowing. What remains is instantaneous awareness of all that is to be known. Kasmin bhagavo vijñate sarvam idam vijñato bhavati. What is that? By knowing which I can know everything. This question in Upanishad is answered here. That is called prajna, the utmost end of the knowledge. And once this is there, then the yogi, at a particular point in this asamprajnat samadhi, suddenly, intuitively becomes aware that the whole prakriti is different than me. Knowing or becoming aware of the prakriti as separate from me or the purusha is purusha khyati. And that state is called kaivalya. The reason why it is called kaivalya is kevala. Who would be there in that stage? There would be nothing in that stage because the creation is away from him. When the entire creation is away from the Purusha, what is left then? What is left is only and only one thing. And when there is only and only one thing, ekameva advitiya, it is called kevala, the only thing. Kevala means only. Nothing exists. The imagination of such a loneliness or aloneness is quite frightening to us. Even our imagination that I am the only one and there is no creation, this imagination itself is frightful to us. It is frightful to us because our intellect cannot even comprehend the state through imagination also. Our imagination falls short because imagination is a function of the experience that you had. You cannot imagine what you have not experienced. And when I say experience, one may ask a question that how can I imagine me flying when I don't have an experience of flying? Mind well, this imagination is extrapolation of a similar type of experience that you have had where you have extrapolated. You saw a bird flying and then you felt like flying. Because you saw a bird flying, so experience is extrapolated. That is imagination. But Purusha and his state, a yogi and the states that we are describing are extremely difficult for us to imagine because we don't have anything similar also. Forget identical, similar also to imagine. And if this is the case, then the question comes, those yogis who are becoming Prakrutilaya and Videha Deva, and those who are moving forward because of Shraddha, Virya, Samadhi and other things, is there a standardized movement forward? Or there is also a difference between those who are moving forward at that level? And the answer is Patanjali Maharaj himself, a yogi par excellence, has been kind enough to tell us that even at the level beyond Prakruti Laya, the yogis have different types of speeds to move up. The speed of moving from Prakruti Laya forward towards the Purusha Khyati depends on what type of Shigrata we have. Speed, Shigrata, how fast the yogi reaches the Purusha stage. Depending upon the speed, the yogis there are again classified into Mrudupaya, Madhyopaya, Adhimatropaya. I know it could be pretty complicating in understanding, but in simpler words, we can say that those who are not stopping at Prakruti level and have decided to take the final plunge from the Prakruti beyond and then jumping on to the next and the final globe called Purusha. Imagine that kind of a leap from the cliff of the valley is jumping onto the other side. This particular last jump, this particular last movement beyond Prakruti differs in amongst yogis depending upon the speed or the shigrata, which is called as samvega. So we have those who are slow, they are called mrudupaya. Those who are having medium shigrata, madhyama, they are called madhyopaya yogi. And those who are adhimatropaya, they are the faster. So slow or fast, faster and fastest. Taratama bhava. Fast, faster and fastest, Mrudupaya, Madhyopaya, and Adhimatropaya. These are the three ways by which the yogi from Prakruti moves forward. The complication doesn't end there. Each of these speeds are again classified into three, which are slow, medium, and fast. Mrudu, Madhya, Tivra. So in order to understand, there are people, there are yogis beyond Prakriti going fast, faster, fastest. In each of them, in fast again, there is slow, medium, fast, slow, medium, fast, slow, medium, fast. So we have 9 types of yogis that are described by Patanjali Maharaj into this. The question is, why get into so many complications? Because next 2 sutras can be understood only when we understand this complication. Right in the beginning, when we saw the first sutra, Atha yoganushasanam. The word atha means after everything else has been studied about yoga, we are supposed to start Yoga Shastra. The reason why we find it difficult to understand is because we do not have Shastrokta Abhyas of other darshanas before reaching here. Mind well, those who were practicing this particular study under the auspices of a guru had already studied enough about other darshanas, including the most complicated Nyaya Vaisheshika Darshana. After studying all these darshanas and after studying the Prasthanatrayi, the Buddhimatta becomes very sharp, and most of those who undertook the journey for the Patanjali Yoga Shastra were sadhana chatushta sampanna, so their pratibha, their buddhi was already developed enough or rich enough. That is why the sutras were not so difficult for them. Perhaps for us it is difficult because we haven't undergone the rigorous exercise of the mental discipline that is required to study the Patanjali Yoga Shastra. However, nothing stops us from giving deep thought as to what is written there. So to recapitulate, after the point of Prakriti Laya, those yogis who move forward, which are called as Upaya Pratyaya Yogi, depending upon the samvega or the shigrata or the speed, they are divided into three: Mrudupaya, Madhyopaya, Adimatropaya, fast, faster and fastest. Each of them again having slow, medium and fast as sub-variants. That is called Tivrata or Samvega. So we have what is called as Mrud Samvega, Madhya Samvega and Tivra Samvega. So we have 9 types of combinations. If at all we want to see those complicated words together, then a Mrudupaya yogi will have Mrud Samvega, Madhya Samvega, Tivra Samvega. A Madhyopaya yogi will also again have Mrudu Samvega, Madhya Samvega, Tivra Samvega. And Adimatropaya, the fastest, also will have Mrudu Adimatropaya, Madhya Adimatropaya, Tivra Adimatropaya. In simpler words, fast, faster, fastest, each divided into slow, medium, fast, slow, medium, fast, slow, medium, fast. Why these are required? Because when we go to the next sutra is Tivra Savveganam Asannaha. Amongst these 9 different combinations, one who has Tivra Samvega means faster Samvega, Shigrata. One who is extremely fast and Shigra, he is Asanna. Asanna means Nikatastha. Who will reach Purusha faster or the fastest? Tivra Samveganam Asannaha. The yogi who has done efforts to move forward from Prakriti Laya with Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna differ with each other depending upon their speed, and those 9 combination amongst that, those who are under Tivra Samvegana, Shigrata, are the one who reach fastest to the point. In those 9, the 22nd sutra says, in those 9, Mrudu Adhyadhimatratva tat api visheshaha. In this Adhimatropaya yogi, that means the fastest yogi, in which there is a Tivra Saivega, that means which is again further faster. This is the Vishesha. Why Vishesha? Because he is the one who reaches first. It is just a comparative analogy of yogis doing their final frontier efforts to move beyond Prakriti Laya and reach a Purusha. Now that it is sounding very complicated to us, naturally a question comes to our mind. Meenakshi has rightly pointed in her questions that it sounds so complicated that it dejects us. Why do so much and how many am I going to do so much, etc. will come to our mind. But I will give an analogy which will explain this. Every day you have been eating food. Every day we eat food. And what is our experience of eating food? Oh, the food is served on the table. I eat them and I feel happy and contented and I'm satiated. I'm full with the food. I'm happy. This is the simplistic definition of eating. Ask a physiologist what is eating. How will he describe it? He will start the description from not from the food. He will say food is of three types: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Then he will say the mastication process. Then he will talk about the teeth. Then he will talk about the saliva. Saliva has got amylase. Then amylase helps in digestion of the carbohydrates as well as proteins. Then there are hormones. Then it moves down esophagus. What is all happening? The same eating has been described now by a physiologist. The process is same even if you are eating what physiologist is saying is true. But he's analyzing it to give you the correct picture of what is actually happening. Because an ignorant person will say, I eat because I have hands, I put it in mouth and I feel happy. But a physiologist tries to analyze and give you the correct picture. Similarly, in Yoga Shastra, the process that happens, even when a bhakta is doing a bhakti, he goes through the similar processes, but he's not aware of it because he doesn't study it. What he says is, Khana khaya na, I ate my food, I'm happy. Why should I bother about the physiology? But those who know physiology better, then they would know what to eat, what not to eat. So again, it depends upon the approach that we have. A karma yogi does not try to understand what happens to the breath, pranayama, because he says that pranayama must be happening, must not be happening. All I know is all my karmas are meant for the Lord. But while saying so, he's also undergoing the similar process, what is being described here, without he being aware of it. Or he might become intuitively aware of it at a later stage. That is why all of the paths lead to the same point. The experiences during the journey may differ. The experiences differ not because the experiences are different. The experiences differ because the path chosen being different, the experiences may not be perceived or may not be intuitively, unless intuition sets in. Intuition sets in at a later stage. So at the final frontiers of all the journeys, of all the yogas almost merge. A Jnana Yogi reaches where a Karma Yogi reaches, where a Bhakti Yogi reaches, where a Raja Yogi reaches. But Raja Yoga or Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga threadbare analyzes everything. Every process has been analyzed. And that is why Mrudu Adhyati Matratva Tat Api Visheshaha is the yogis beyond the Prakriti have different speeds. In short, we can remember this, different speeds of which those who move faster, Tivra Samvega, are Vishesha because they reach faster to the Purusha Tattva. Because of all this, a very relevant question has been asked in the Bhashyam itself. Kim etasmat eva asannatamaha samadhi bhavati yathasya labhe bhavati anya api kaschid upayo na bhavati? A question is asked that all this complication that he has to use Shraddha, Virya, and then the final frontier, is this the only way to reach there? Is there any other way? And the answer is yes. And what is that answer? The 23rd most important sutra, Ishvara Pranidhanat Va. Va means or. Either all this that is described so far or Ishvara Pranidhana. Ishvara Pranidhana meaning Pranidhanat iti bhakti visheshat. Now this must be very shocking that word bhakti is coming right in the Yoga Shastra. We have some foggy concept in the mind that bhakti has nothing to do with yoga and yoga has nothing to do with bhakti. The bhakti here is same as that bhakti which is described in Bhakti Shastra. If you study Bhakti Shastra in detail, in fact, we have very, very faint idea about what bhakti is. One of the best treatises on bhakti is Bhagavata Bhakti Rasayan by Madhusudan Saraswati. If we read this particular treatise, or if we read Sri Bhashyam of Ramanujam, or if we read Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Shiksha Ashtakam, or if we read about the Bhakti Sutra, Bhakti Rasa by Srila Goswami, Jiva Goswami, as well as Sanatan Goswami, or if we read about the Bhashyam of Madhvacharya, the bhakti that is described there, mind well, it also, bhakti also is described in detail the way now we are seeing Raja Yoga, it is there also, it is described in detail. So in that bhakti, they have talked about what is Ishwara Pranidhana, Prakarshena, Nidha. Now when Nidhiyate, Prakarshena Nidhiyate Manaha iti Pranidhanaha. When the mind is completely devoted to the Lord, to the Ishvara, but one important instruction before we move forward is, please mind well that this Ishvara is not the Ishvara that is envisaged in Advaita. In Advaita, Ishvara is the creator. In Sankhya, Ishvara is not the creator. The concept of Ishvara in Sankhya as well as Yoga Shastra is different than the concept of Ishvara we have. If this Ishvara is different than that Ishvara, then what is the difference? One. Two, how by propitiating this Ishvara, yogi can move forward fast? How he can ask for this krupa of this Ishvara? And who is this Ishvara who is not like Advaita Ishvara? He has no role to play in the creation. Why? Because we have already seen Sankhya's creation. There is a Prakriti which is Pradhana, then Mahat, then Ahankar, then those Sattvagunas, then Rajogunas, then Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas. There is no God anywhere. If there is no Ishvara in the Srushti creation, Srushti Rachana, then from where this God is coming? Is he a different Purusha? And if he's a different Purusha, then there are multiple Purushas? Because so far we carried the concept that Purusha is one. All these confusing answers would be discussed when we discuss this particular 23rd Sutra, which is absolutely 2 words. Umpteen number of books have been written on that. Longer lectures have been delivered on this, because Ishvara Pranidhanat Va is a sutra pregnant with enormous importance. This is the sutra where everybody gets alarmed that, look, there is Ishvara into the Yoga Shastra. Also, Sankhyas are supposed to be without Ishvara. While it's quite an irony that Sankhya's first book available about Sankhya Sutras is by a person called Rishi called Ishwar Chandra. His name was Ishwar Chandra. And yet in Sankhyas there is no Ishwara. But in Yoga there is Ishwara. But this Ishwara is not same Ishwara as Advaita. So who is this Ishwara? How it is different than Advaita? If it is different and it is still there, it is different from Purusha, or is one a part of the Purusha? If he is one part of the Purusha, then Purushas are multiple or not? If at all this Ishvara's pranidhan or bhakti helps in doing what the yogi does, in what way he helps, all this would be subject of discussion when we discuss the 23rd Sutra. So far, we have completed the journey of the yogi from the point of view of shutting external world, moving from Vitarka Vichara, Ananda, Asmita to Videha Deha to Prakruti Laya, and now from Prakruti to the last jump of the Purusha, having different speeds. Amongst them, the Tivra Asan, the one with fantastic speed, will be reaching faster. And then the question has come whether they will always be doing everything on their own dint of effort, or will they be helped by somebody? And the answer is yes, there will be a help, and the help will come from Ishvara. So who is that? Ishvara would be the thing that we need to discuss in the next session. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om. Himanshu ji?
Hari Om Sanjay ji. I'm just waiting if someone has a question.
No, can I just take the questions Meenakshi ji has mentioned?
Ji, sure.
Yeah, they are very, very good and very relevant question. And the question is, why is it so difficult to realize God if He is all pervading and most merciful? It should not be a privilege to a rare few and accessible and easy for whoever wants to reach Him. Reading Raja Yoga, it seems so difficult to realize God, then one can just give up on it. Why are there so many conditions to it? The answer to this question, Meenakshi ji, is that it is not a difficult to realize the God. The difficulty depends upon where you are. Now let us take an example. There is a child who wants to walk up a mountain. It would be very difficult for him, but an adult who wants to walk up the mountain, it will be easy for him. Now the question is that level of difficulty depends upon which stage you are in. Because of your past karmas, if the vikasitata of your gunas in you is not proper, what I mean is, if we have continuously strived hard to inculcate sattva guna in us, then the person who gets sattva guna more and more, he becomes more and more energetic to reach the God. So the difficulties for him appear to be less because of his sattva guna than the person who is rajoguni or tamoguni. So the God is like a mountain top. It is always accessible to anybody. The question is how fast and with what capacity you can go depends upon what capacities you have. So the difficulty is not realizing God because of God is difficult to realize. It is the difficulties that are existing into this sadhaka. So that being the reason, one has to work on himself to reach the God. In fact, it is said that you don't reach the God. The God is right in you. You need to do the work to just open up the well that is actually separating you from the God. So the difficulties that we have is because of the gunas that we have inculcated. In fact, many a times, very, very few are interested in studying Upanishad. Forget about, there are extremely few who study Yoga Shastra. Why? Because everyone finds it so boring, so difficult and complicated. All this because the Sattva Guna Buddhi is not there and it is not helping him. However, a person of Guru Deva's stature, he simply went into these difficulties with a smile on his face. Why? Because Sattva Guna has reached such a level that he said, difficulties, no problem, snow, no problem, sub-zero temperature, no problem, Tapovan Maharaj, no problem, I will go and learn it. So you get that virya and utsaha because of the Sattva Guna. Second question is, conquering mind is understood and required, but then it should be a speedy progress. Once again, a very stupid question, as it is dejecting to see the whole work. It is not a stupid question, it is a very relevant question. Conquering mind is definitely a speedy process for whom? To run 100 meters race is a speedy process for Usain Bolt. For you and me, it is not. Why? Because he has practiced, I haven't. He has the ability because he has developed the muscles required for it. He has been trained by a guru. In our case, we are not yet started running. So it is not as it is a speedy progress as far as your speed is concerned. You can speed it up right now, right here. From the time you decide that I shall speed it up, you can speed it up. But your mind does not let you speed it up because the mind is more prone towards the indriya sukha. It is easy to say that you become a Vairagya Purna person, but can we become a Vairagya Purna person? So difficult. Can you as a mother have two roles simultaneously in your mind? One as a neutral person looking after the child, and second is as a mother. You cannot separate those two because we get attached to our children. We get attached to our husband. We get attached to the happiness coming from the acquisition of properties, objects. So the speed depends upon the firmness and the resolve. Higher the resolve, speedier the progress. Swami Shivananda says God is cruel. He tests. The saints lose all. They are poverty struck. This is not motivating enough. One can be rich, successful, and with family and get God realized. Yes, nothing stops you, because God does not put you condition of or become you should be poor and then only you can come to me. But let me tell you one thing. The moment you progress, you find the hollowness in everything which is rich, successful, and family. All this turns out to be very hollow. Runanubandha kshayena. Once the runanubandha is over in the mind, then you have no connection whatsoever, no interest whatsoever about the things around you, including the relations. So that is why, in a very sarcastic manner, Swami Shivananda is saying that God is cruel. God is cruel means, he tests means, he wants you to come to the Vairagya Purna Avastha. And what is Vairagya Purna Avastha? Completely cutting asunder all the connections that you have with this existing world, which also includes the richness, the success, the family, the relationships. And that is why being in the pond of a mud, and also you want to remain clean, those things are not possible. And why it is called as mud? It is a mud for the person who is outside the pond. Because the sadhana, the sadhak moves out of the pond, he looks towards the pond as a dirty thing. But we are only used to the pond, so we found this to be the best thing. And then we say, why can't I have richness, success, and family, and also have God? What happens is, reaching towards God itself takes you slowly away from the family. And that is why when Gurudeva went to his place, to which place? To the place of Shivananda. If we think that, he was not remembering his family, he did. But slowly the connection with the family went on fading. The mother, which he had already lost when he was growing, the father, the second mother, whatever, all the family, it is not that he was not aware of them. Being aware is a different thing, and being attached is a different thing. That is why you cannot be immersed in the world and yet be God realized. There is a stage when you are God realized, you can get re-immersed in the world because you know how to get re-immersed. But while you are immersed in the world, then achieving Lord is not technically possible. That is why Vairagyam is traced always earlier. Why the yogi? Why the forest? Why the meditation? Why being away? Why solitude? Why not having too many things around the world? Why not too many connections? Why every saint, including Kabir Maharaj, Tukaram Maharaj, Samartha Ramdas, Shankaracharya, everybody is saying, please disconnect yourself from Bharya, Putra, Yetan Masa Vasadi Vikaram. These are all Vikara of the mass, the flesh. Why are they so critical about it? Is because you can't be riding on two horses at one time. The horse, which is preyas, which is worldly horse, will ultimately take you to the destruction. So you have to take your feet off that particular horse, ride on the Vairagyam in order to reach faster to the God. Hari.
Hari Om Sanjay ji.
Hari.
Just a question related to this session and the previous one also. So today we discussed two things. One is the level at which you're, whether you're a child or an adult. And the second thing we discussed was the speed of movement. So there are two levels. I mean, and we said, there are 9 different types of people. My question goes a little before that in terms of speed. Now you have a Videya Mukti and a Prakriti Laya level, right? So in some ways, the Videya Mukti has a chance to be reborn and then practice and become a yogi and then actually transcend. Whereas Prakriti Laya, because he is merged with Prakriti, and it only when dissolution happens, which is a much longer period in time, maybe, I don't know whether my assumption is right, only then that person, Prakriti Laya, gets to move towards Purusha. So just in terms of dimension of time, and I would have presumed that Prakriti Laya is a little higher than Videha.
Yes.
So, I don't know whether that assumption is right. And the second assumption is the speed of movement. So somebody who can be born and practice again and transcend is probably moving at a faster rate than somebody who's more advanced, because he has to wait till dissolution occurs, which is so many years ahead. So can you just clarify that, and then I'll ask the second question.
Hari Om, you are absolutely right. Those who are in Prakriti Laya, after the dissolution of the whole universe, that is the time when they are ultimately merging or ultimately reaching the destination. That is correct. But those who are Videha Deva, they will be born right during this particular Brahmanda itself as a human beings. But mind well, whether they are born from Linga Sharira, which is Videha Deva, or from the Karana Sharira, which is the Prakriti Laya Deva, they always start right at the point where they have ended. So what happens is, such a person, if a Videha Deva gets born as a human being, he is born as a born yogi. So you find that they are here for sometimes at the age of even 20, 17, 9, 8, 7, 13, and they become the accomplished yogi. And we get mesmerized by how is it that in such a small age he learned so much and he knew so much and he knew. All this is because these are those Videha Devas which are born for the final emancipation. In case of Prakriti Laya also, even this process is not required. Now the question is, comparatively we do feel that Prakriti Laya Deva is now an inferior person because the other person got a chance to come back and accomplish that. But mind well, Videha Deva, after coming back in human form, when they again attend from Videha Deva forward, he may get stuck at Prakriti Laya. So a Videha Deva getting reborn as a man or as human being, Manushya Janma, again trying from that point onwards, may get stuck at Prakriti Laya. So it depends upon at which stage you merge. Now the reason why Prakriti Laya Deva doesn't come back to human beings, though he's senior or he's superior, and become immediately Mukta, is because we are trying to see as if these are two persons who are trying to move forward. Mind well, the whole consciousness which is transformed into this Prakriti. Prakriti is nothing else but the Shakti of Shiva. Now the question is, when you become Shakti Maya, you become one with the Shakti. Even in that Shakti itself, although you are not Shiva, the Shakti itself is not a small existence. It is an extraordinary existence. The only thing is, when will that Shakti merge back into Shiva? That depends upon what Shiva will do. That is why Prakriti Laya means Shakti going back into Shiva. So at the level of Pralaya, the Shakti merges back into the Shiva. So you stay as a Shiva Shakti is also not an issue. So it's not that, because he's stuck there, and then post Pralaya, again from the Shakti form, he may get at the instance of the Purusha as a officiating thing or as a Ishvara of something. So the whole fact is, because you are within the Brahmanda and reached a Deva state, which is Videha Deva state, you are immediately likely to be reborn. After you are reborn, you may reach the Kaivalya, you may reach again Prakriti Laya and get dissolved there. The word used by Vivekananda is they are stagnated. The word used is stagnation. Now stagnation is a relative thing compared to the Kaivalya. But otherwise, they are not ordinary individuals. They are even superior to Devas. Because Deva has a power on certain sections of creation, while Prakriti Laya Deva has a power on the Prakriti. It is the purest form of Shakti of Ishvara. Imagine all Devatas together. Devi is a Shakti. All Devis together is what Prakriti Laya Deva is. But these are relative differences yet mentioned by the Patanjali Maharaj, because he says even this is not the end. There is still a step to go forward. So we are talking of excellent amongst the excellents. That is the reason in our pantheon, Rishis are considered to be the highest, not the gods. And that is why, mind well, Ishvara Pranidhanat, the word is Ishwar, not Deva. Dev is different than Ishwar. Let's be very clear on this. We use it very together. This word is always used together. Ishwara and Deva. Deva is not Ishwar. Ishwara has got a thing Ish into it. Ishate, lordship. That is a different thing. Deva is a different thing. It is like this. The secretaries to the Department of Government of India are all Devas. The chief secretary and the cabinet secretary is Ishwara. And the Purusha is the prime minister. So no chief secretary will have ever power unless prime minister decides. Yet no work of chief secretary or secretary is done by the prime minister. Because prime minister doesn't do anything in the sense of Purusha. So Purusha doesn't do anything, but under the auspices of Purusha, the Ishvara and the Devas and the Prakriti and everything, because from Prakriti downwards, everything. So that is why we are so far talked about Videha Deva, Prakriti Laya Deva. Now we are going to talk about Ishvara. So we will be coming to that. Also, there are variations about this Prakriti Laya Deva. Prakriti Laya Deva is supposed to be a controller of a solar system. This is thought by some people. There are multiple galaxies. Each galaxy is presided by a presiding deity. These presiding deities are these Devas. In Devas, again, destruction of a particular system, solar system, is entrusted to a particular deity. But destruction of all the galaxies and Brahmandas together. So these are gradations. We shall discuss that when we come to Ishvara Pranidhana Atva. Hari.
So these 9 stages pertain at the Prakriti layer stage, or they pertain to the Vidya layer stage?
No, the 9 are meant for those who have not become Prakriti layer. They have not merged with Prakriti. They are still moving forward. Those who got merged, they are out of the system. They are out of the competition. Because at Prakriti Laya means they have become one with Prakriti. Now they don't realize, they don't have, that is where that Smriti comes into the picture. This is not ordinary Smriti. The Shraddha and Smriti that is spoken is the one who is still able to maintain that this bliss is not that bliss. This bliss is not that bliss. That awareness, it's very difficult. That's why I gave an example. Imagine the happiness that we get in this world as human beings multiplied by 1 million times. In fact, it is given also, Pariman is given in Shastra, that how big that happiness is. When that bliss comes, naturally there is a tendency to enjoy and keep enjoying the bliss. If you enjoy the bliss, you are stuck. Because enjoy means bhaktrutvata. And that is why those yogis who still, and when we are discussing these stages, please refer to Swami Vivekananda's biography. In the outskirts of Almora, while he was meditating, with Akhandananda was keeping a watch on him. He was meditating near a water mill. There was a well there and he was meditating there. It was about outskirts of Almora, couple of kilometers before Almora. In the deep state of meditation, he was there for some time in meditation, and after that he came out of Samadhi and came to Akhandananda and he said, now I realize that the inner atmosphere has certain levels which are so different. Today I am aware of it. That means the samadhi that he had experienced so far, that process was still continuously on, and he got a new enlightenment at that point of time. Do refer to that particular biography, you will realize it. Gautam Buddha, under that tree, when he said he got enlightenment on Vaishakha Shuddha Purnima, what happened was he went through this stage of Atitivra Samvega, and the Purusha Khyati was there. And Siddhartha became Gautam Buddha. Something similar has happened to Gurudeva. Usually all these people who have realized this, they are silent about the final moment. Why they are silent? They are silent because after that there is no identity left. So they can't come and say that I did this and I got this and then something like this happened. I is gone. Who will describe? That is why Ramakrishna Paramahamsa tried to describe these stages. The same stages are described in different words when it comes to Kundalini Yoga. They are same stages. But while describing that, he could describe up to a particular point and then he went in Samadhi. Because after Asmita, it is all calculated guess, substantiated by the Rishis. That is why Patanjali Maharaj, we should be so grateful to him that he was able to actually put all those experiences also in Sutra. And that is why, as we are moving forward, you must have noticed after Asmita, opinions are differing. Opinions are differing because although Patanjali Maharaj told it, he told it in Sutra form. And no one knows, no one has that experience. So that is why it is so difficult to talk about it. That is why Patanjali Yoga Sutra should be studied only under the auspices of those who have reached that stage. That is why all commercial books in the market are so misleading. I have read a few of them. They are very misleading, and I consider them as standard books. But the standard books are, as I told you, Vachaspati Mishra, Yogi par excellence, then Rajamartanda Vritti, Raja Bhoj, and then Vijnana Bhikshu. Because those are the ones who are able to correctly interpret what is the meaning of this. And again, on this interpretation, if you want to read further, people of the stature of either our Gurudeva or Swami Krishnananda or Shivananda Maharaj, because they are also yogis, and that is why they're able to express it easily. However, very few of them have gone into the details the way we are going, because they have been delivering lectures to the normal people, ordinary people. So if you start in ordinary pravachan, talking about this Tivra Savveg and all that, the interest would be lost. This is meant for serious sadhaka, one who wants to really know what Patanjali Yoga Shastra is. And our whole effort is to see that at the end of this particular grantha, the grantha is sorted out. What is sorted out? You understand the grantha in its entirety. The whole effort is, otherwise to finish Patanjali Yoga Sutra, this will not take time. You can finish it in 3 sessions also. The reason why we are going to give into detail is fundamental clarity, and mind well, by the end of this particular Yoga Shastra Abhyasam that we are doing with the grace of God and Gurudeva, our concept will slowly become broader and wider. It will help us in understand Advaita also with a great efficiency, and look back towards the Bhagavad Gita with much more clarity in the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita than what we have now. Hari.
So one thing only, when you were explaining to Meenakshi ji, we said that, moving towards the spiritual path means leaving the rest of the world. Now we've also had, like we talk about Rajrishi, like King Janaka or Krishna, any of these people who have supposedly balanced all sides of the entire wheel of life.
Yes.
So are we to, is this Janaka also an avatar? I mean, is that why he's able to do it? Or, is it like most normal human beings cannot do it?
No, it is simply because Janaka was a realized soul. After you have had either Purusha Darshanam, that is Kaivalyam, or Moksha, whatever you call, or Atma Jnana, then coming back in this world is not at all an issue. Gurudeva came back in this world, did what he wanted to do without even an iota of sin in his custody, simply because he knew how to. It is like this. There's an extremely turbulent water. If you go and try swimming there, you will sink, you will drown. But if you are an expert swimmer, now you can go into that water. But the condition is, first you should be a realized person to come back. It's very simple. We have come to this jatra, fair, called world. We don't know what to do. So we are doing whatever we feel like doing, and that is why we're getting stuck into dandramyamana avastha. We are getting stuck into the whirlpool. Now, get out of this. How do you get out of this? By doing this, I don't want, that I don't want, that I don't want, vairagyam, and then through viveka, I go out. Once you go out at that level, you realize, oh, the fair was not bad at all. Now I know how to behave in this fair. You can come back. In fact, the difference between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is, Jnani goes out of the world and many times doesn't come back into the world. A Bhakta, right from the beginning, tells the Lord that I don't want to go out of the world. I will be in the world. That is why Bhaktas are never asked to do any brahmacharya, etc. In the sense, they are married grahastha ashrami. But what they do, everything that is there in this world is Bhagavan Vishnu, Krishna. My brother, no, my brother is Krishna. My wife, she's Krishna. My father, she's Krishna. This way, if you go, then what happens? Simultaneously, you learn going out and coming in simultaneously. That is Bhakti Shastra. That is why many a times Jnanis, after achieving Jnan, develop Bhakti in them. That is called Jnanottar Bhakti. And then everything is fine. Tapovan Maharaj, hell-bent on going away from the world, and he basked into the bliss. He said, no, I don't want to be a part of this world. His own disciple, he said, no, I want to go back into the world. Tapovan Maharaj initially said no to Gurudeva. Shivananda Maharaj said, go. So it was strategic issue that they had discussed. But the fact that it is like this. A Pativrata going into the brothel lane, once the whole city knows that she's a Pativrata of a very high order, even if she goes through the brothel, there is no problem. But imagine the one who is not yet established goes through the brothel lane. What happens? This is the difference between the two. Hari
Hari
Hari Om Sanjay ji.
Hari
We are so blessed to have someone with the blessings of Gurudev in front of us to give us the explanation all along. I was under the impression that the ultimate is the what you call the deity kind of thing. Like now we are going beyond that Bhava Pratyaya Yogi and Ubhaya Pratyaya Yogi and all. Now when we are going forward, as you contemplate more into this Patanjali Yoga Sutra and the Sutra 22 and 23, where you are saying that in Advaita is the ultimate is the creator. Whereas in Sankhya Yoga, it is coming and saying it's a Purusha or Prakriti is the ultimate. Now, when you start thinking in two different directions, is there any possibility that we will shift away from the God or the presiding deity kind of situation than to the universe or the creator kind of thing situation?
Hari Om, there is no difference. Advaita does not end at creator. Creator, which is Niyamak Tattva Ishvara, is again an arrangement of Advaita. Advaita ends in Brahman. The Brahman of Advaita is same as Purusha of Sankhya. So there is no difference. The difference lies in the fact that when the creation is done automatically, we saw the way of creation of Sankhya. The Sankhyas ask a question that when you know that there is a Prakriti creates everything, why do you require a regulator for all this? This is already created in a particular flow which we studied. Then why should you have a separate person called Ishvara? And then they ask three questions. The questions are very relevant. The first question is, why is Ishvara related? Because he does Krupa or he does Anukampa. The question is, if he does Anukampa, then he's created for the Anukampa or compassion. That means the creation must be before Ishvara. Otherwise, how will he do Anukampa? One. Second part is, if Ishvara has done the creation, that means prior to Ishvara, there is no creation. So the creator and creation, they may conflict. It's two parts. Third is, what is the guarantee that there is only one Ishvara? If there are multiple, then these issues are to be avoided. So they say, if it is yantra rudha mayaya, like a machine, it is already set into motion. Why do you need a regulator? Because rules are already set. Rules are carrying this. It is like a modern management, system-centric approach, not a person-centric approach. So this is what Sankhyas think. So the differences lies in the minute variations. Now imagine, even in our Advaita, we were talking about Devas, God, Ishvara, all that fine. It's not wrong. The question is at a higher level. At a higher level. For example, when you are a child and going to the school, we say our teacher is like God to us. Please touch his feet. Absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong. At a PhD level, we say that it is not the teacher, it is his knowledge that is important. Now, what is the change that has happened? The person has been separated from the knowledge. Similarly, when you're in the beginning progress, for a mass scale, for the masses, remind well, this is only meant for select few. Select few because Sattva Guna is not everywhere. For those masses, it is always better to have first fear for the purity of heart that there is a God, he may punish me. And if that punishment comes, like there is a naraka there and they put you in the boiling water, etc. Now at this stage, we understand there is no boiling water. What it means is karma will have a phalam. But you cannot go and tell into the villages that your karma has a phalam. No. There you have to say that, look, the upper, then when you go up, they'll whip you there. This is the way of presentation. As you evolve, that is why when we talk about this evolution, these all are there in Advaita also. The names may vary. The fundamental concept, they're slightly different here and there. Do you know that why is Guru Deva saying that Gita, Bhagavad Gita is nothing but Sankhya, nothing but Sankhya? Then where is Advaita? It merges. The differences are there, but only for an academician. There are few differences, yes. Suppose you are eating mango by squeezing it in your mouth and you're eating it by cutting into pieces and then eating it. There will be differences in the process. The taste of the mango is going to be the same because Antim Tattvam is same. Approach. Those who have taken commerce stream, he will say how commerce is great for making the livelihood. The one in science will say that you can't match science. Fine. That is because of the ways. But all these sides are basically to become commercial competent to earn money. Similarly, Deva Prapti. When you say Deva Prapti, Sankhya will say, Deva Prapti is Videha Prapti. Why you want to do that? But Deva Prapti in Advaita, when we say Deva, we are almost talking about Brahman. It is wrong to say Deva as Brahman. But at a level of a common level, Deva, Brahman, everything is rolled in one. As you move forward, then of course, Devas have an officiating time. Devas also lose their life. Devas are also supposed to die. So, hey Deva, so I don't want to become Deva. I want to reach Brahman. This is at a higher level. So it is just the difference of level. Differences between darshanas are not many. Do you mean to say that those who follow Jain religion have not reached the salvation? They have. Do you mean to say that those who have followed Buddhism have not reached salvation? They have. The difference lies in the ways. Margam. So Margam, yes, may be different. Explanation, Maya. Maya Tattvam is a creation of Shankaracharya. Why? It was very difficult to explain. Purusha and Prakriti, if Purusha is so inert, Prakriti is so insentient, then how they come together? Nothing is done by Purusha. Prakriti cannot do anything. Then how they can create? Because Prakriti cannot create. Purusha is not interested in creation. Then how the creation happened? There is a big gap. And Sankhyas are completely silent on it. In fact, Sankhya's are supposed to be very lame in explaining this relationship. And Shankaracharya excelled in that explanation by creating a new entity called Maya. So these are all philosophical as well as partly empirical explanations of the things. So these differences, and now at this stage we are studying at a relatively higher level. We need to go into these details just to make our Shraddha stronger. It is like going on a journey with a clarity of mind. See, without a torch in the hand also, you can walk on a road in the darkness.
Yes.
But with a torch when you walk, then it
Confident.
becomes easier. Hari.
Hari Om.